Anyone heard of pelvic floor breathing before? Yes? New to anybody, concept of pelvic floor breathing? Very cool. So I'll talk a little bit about it again. Just relax and go to a seat or lay down. Talk a bit about the breath. So when we're born, we breathe mostly into our chest. We're typically mouth breathers as babies. And then what I call the infantile breath, only into this first third of the body. It's kind of broken up into the parts. I think about the bandhas, if you know about Muladhara Bandha, Uddiyana Bandha, Jaladhara Bandha. These points of the body where the body either closes off, or there's a seal in the diaphragm. And usually we kind of open this one into the chest. Then we start to learn belly breathing. That kind of helps us learn to move the diaphragm, kind of wake it up and stretch it and get it kind of mobile. But stretching the diaphragm forward and widening it, when we widen the body, it's kind of like widening a balloon. The top and the bottom get a little bit tapered. So we kind of squeeze in. Our shoulders usually rise when the midpoint is our widest point. And so we want to learn how to draw the breath all the way down the body into the base, right? And kind of think about a flower. As a flower blossoms, it also roots down into the ground and blossoms and roots, right? And then we want to contract and compress everything in and up to move the breath fully out of the body. And that also compresses the organs and gives them some squeeze so that they can inhale and flourish and exhale and cleanse them out. So it's kind of this self-regulating system of the body. Also our nervous system, our nerves kind of move down this large broadband highway where the base of the spine and the top of the spine, where our nerves kind of spread out into the head or down the tail. And we want to learn how to lengthen this, right? And we want to breathe. Typically when we're tapering at the base and we're kind of closing off and contracting and constricting, that's going to cause tension, density, so that energy can't move through very dense matter. It needs to be soft and kind of open and receptive. So if we're closed off down there, then we can't really ground our energy downward. If we're lifting up on our inhale, it's kind of like uprooting ourselves as we're trying to move and grow and expand. And so we want to learn how to root down so that we can rise, and then ground our energy so it's no longer pinging back and forth between the top and the base of the spine, in between our toxic feminine, our toxic masculine, right? We can kind of go to the extremes as we're kind of ping back and forth, and we want to kind of come into that fusion center. And having the pump regulated kind of helps us sustain that state. And the body, this pump right here is the biggest pump of the body. We want to get that pattern correct, because if this dominant pump is influencing, every other pump is following along with whatever pattern it sets. So we want to make sure that it's full and really contracting everything in and out, so that all the other pumps kind of follow along. If there's a kink in this pump, they're all going to pick up on that, and we're going to deal with dysfunction, sickness, all that kind of stuff. So here's what the pelvic floor looks like in the body. It's situated in the pelvic bone at the base. It's attached to the pubis bone, the tail, and then the sits bones on the side. And so for women, we have our vaginal canal. We have that opening. And then the testes, it's where the testes and the genitalia drop down through the body. So that opening also has our anus for our systems to release, our urethra. And it's kind of like a woven web of muscle. And then it has the openings between the weave. And when it gets really tight, it can get really stuck to this bone and not able to move. So we're always kind of contracting. What we can think of as a Kegel is always contracting, especially on the inhale. We want it to open and receive oxygen and circulation. So if we're closing it off as we're breathing in, we're not doing it any favors with the breath. It's not getting its share, right? So we want to open it as we inhale and exhale, close everything off. So you can kind of think of, as we get older, if these muscles are too loose, then they're not really functional. But if they're too tight, they're also not functional, because they can't go with the flow of our body and our pumping system. And so if that happens, then we may run into things like incontinence, a lot of menstruation issues, even digestive problems, right? Not being able to, we're sending that tension up into the stomach, and it's not able to fully release. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong with this, and kind of everything ties down to the root. Back pain, tightness in the jaw, these two, the base of the body and the top of the body. This pelvic bone is a lot like our shoulder girdle. So the Jaladhara Bandha and Muladhara Bandha are very much connected, the throat and the base. So let's move into kind of feeling into the body, where it is and how it feels to move the pelvic floor. We're going to use our blankets, and we're going to roll them up just to create a small roll. So between the bones, the 6 bones here, when I'm sitting on the floor, I kind of have this arch in between the bones, right? It's not flat on the surface. So all we're doing is kind of raising the floor up so that it kind of rests against the pelvic floor. So you're going to sit on it like that, where it's resting on the pelvic floor. You don't want it too tight, but you don't want it too loose. So play around, see what fits. Sit on it like that. You can sit cross-legged. I like my legs out. So just rock a little side to side. Just noticing the prop under the body. If you need to adjust it, you loosen it. Up a little bit. It takes a moment getting comfortable. And we're going to start by just dropping our chin towards the chest. Notice your shoulders, if they're moving forward, maybe move them up towards the ears and down, back. Maybe rock a little back and forth. Noticing the base of the spine, you can even place your hand on your sacrum. And then take your other hand, you can place it at the top of the spine. The neck and shoulders meet. And we want to connect these two lines here. So maybe moving a little bit forward and back. Letting the tailbone point down into the core of the earth. From that energy, rise up through the spine, lengthening through the mid-back. Into the shoulders, let the head hang heavy, kind of dripping off of the spine. Just let your breath draw a line from the base of the spine to the top of the spine. And from the top of the spine down to the base of the spine. Just bringing attention to these points of the body. So when we start to dissociate from certain areas of the body, from tension or trauma, we don't even have it in our awareness to pay attention to them because we've cut off our connection, our sensitivity. Sometimes this type of proprioception is nice, just to remind the body that the systems are connected. Feeling the breath and the energy move up and down the spine. Again, checking on the shoulders, making sure they're dropping down the back. When you feel that you have some good support, just let the head lightly come up and hover over the shoulders. Then we're going to place a hand on our chest, right around the collarbone. And we're going to take our other hand, place it at the where the ribs end at the center, right at the base of the sternum. And that's where our Uddiyana Bandha begins. You just breathe in here. Take your breath and connect it between the hands. Feel the chest spread. And exhale, the chest soften down. I'm going to show you really quick what the breath should look like. I kind of skipped this part. All right, so I'm gonna show you belly breath, and then I'm gonna show you, can take your hands down for a moment. I'm gonna show you belly breath, and I'm gonna show you what pelvic floor breathing looks like, the difference between the two. So forgive me, demo. So belly breath, turn to the side. Belly breath, usually the navel comes forward, exhale, back towards the spine. And with pelvic floor breathing, I'm actually gonna engage that Uddiyana Bandha, maybe like 20-30%, to create that kind of stem of the flower, to cinch and lengthen through the belly. So instead of breathing through the belly, to the body like a balloon, think about it like an hourglass. We want to breathe into the 360 degrees into the chest and 360 degrees into the hips, imagining the sits bones even spreading apart. And exhale, coming back together as we lift and zip the pelvic floor up the body. So belly breathing looks like this. Pelvic floor breathing, you see my belly go in and up. So my belly has a bit of tone to it. Pelvic floor from the front. And then pelvic floor breathing. See how much more I spread through my chest here? Because I have that kind of cinching and lengthening through the waist so that I can blossom up through the chest and actually spread through the collarbone. So I want to think about our breath moving kind of like the structure of a kite to catch the wind. So we have that vertical support up and down from the top of the spine to the base of the spine, but then also that horizontal support, that upper horizontal. So think about that between the shoulders spreading open as we lengthen. That's kind of what it looks like. Now we're gonna feel it. So again, taking one hand right around the collarbone, and the other hand at the base of the sternum and ribs. And just connecting that breath, letting your chest spread open. Don't worry about the belly or the pelvic floor for a moment. Just practice expanding through the chest, letting the lungs open, widen. Think about the lungs unclenching the fingers and spreading through the fingers as you inhale. You know, maybe closing the eyes and feeling the points, the warm points underneath the palms, in the chest, in the upper belly. Maybe draw a line of breath with a color, light in between the palms. And we're just going to extend that light, that line, and place your hand at the very base of your belly, the deepest part of your belly. Now let that breath draw all the way down, spreading into the pelvic floor, releasing the buttocks. Maybe you can breathe into the roll beneath you. And as you exhale, begin to engage and lift the pelvic floor, engaging that Muladhara Bandha, sending that energy, zipping it up the spine, up the front of the belly, moving the air out. Inhale, releasing it like a supportive hammock, dropping down, cradling the organs. Exhale, lifting in and up. Feeling that line of connection between the hands, maybe drawing that line of light and color. So we inhale, we're spreading through the pelvic floor. As we exhale, lifting and engaging. Kind of the same muscles if you're trying to stop peeing. Let that soften. Let's open our eyes for a moment. I want you to imagine the base of the pelvic floor. Pelvic floor is like another diaphragm. We want it to move in the same direction as the diaphragm in our ribs. When our ribs descend, our pelvic floor descends, and everything ascends together. And then you can also think the pelvic floor like a hand. And I like to think about it like that, like inhaling and spreading the palm of the pelvic floor over the roll. And then exhale, lightly gripping the roll, trying to lift it up with the pelvic floor. Inhaling, spreading through the fingers of the pelvic floor.
Exhale, lift and gather, and zip it up as if you're zipping up through a wetsuit. Feel that energy knitting through the ribs, moving the breath, compressing it all the way out of the body. Inhaling, spreading through the palm of the pelvic floor, maybe the palm of the lungs, and the back of the heart. Exhale, lift and gather. Inhale, open and spread. Noticing the props beneath you, lengthen through the spine, lengthen through the belly. Exhale, lift and gather. Zipping up through the front of the body. This gives you an idea about where the muscles are in the body and how they move. I'm going to move into a few more exercises. So pelvic floor breathing is the proper way to breathe. It takes time for our bodies to develop into being able to handle that mechanism of the pelvic floor. It really controls our life force energy and our subtle energy. So it's very powerful. If we're just kind of going willy-nilly with it, we could do a lot of damage. So don't feel bad if, like, oh, I wish I'd known this before as you kind of get into it. I would be here and da-da-da-da. And it's just when you learn it, you know what I mean? No big deal. Life is just moment by moment, right? And so it takes about 6 to 9 months to reverse and correct breathing, to get this pelvic floor breathing where you're checking your breath and you're like, oh, it's moving in the same direction with the diaphragm. I like to tell people that's like a gestation period. Imagine it's like birthing yourself into new life. This is really going to enhance everything you do, because the pelvic floor, it sets the tone for our form and our function, how our body moves, our muscular systems work together. So let's go through a couple of exercises that'll kind of help you instill it in the body, retrain the body, create that safety and support so that we can fully surrender into this breath. We'll come up to standing. There'll be many dynamic movements as you learn pelvic floor breathing and then start applying it to your yoga practice. So maybe transitions where you may be guided into incorrect breathing. Sometimes that can be helpful. Our tools of sculpting our body are expansion and contraction, resistance and release. And it's something that is often taught in a yoga class that I've noticed that is backwards, but it's also a great exercise to reverse this, is goddess squat. And a lot of times we'll inhale up and exhale down, right? Inhale up, fill up with breath, exhale, pull it all into the center. Now, if we're backwards breathing, this might make sense because we're inhaling, belly's coming forward, we're pulling up on our pelvic floor, so everything's moving up, right? And then exhale, we're dropping it down, or drop your pelvic floor, right, into the earth, release everything down. But what we want to do is support this breath, right? So it makes sense. I also do ballet, so we do a lot of pliés in ballet, and that's for jumps, right? Coming up, we don't want to break our knees when we land, but we also want to get that propulsion up. And so how to move the breath into that with physics is I should fill up with breath like a rocket, right? Fill up and fuel up, spread into my base, widen my stance, right? Then use my breath to and kind of come into center, become more aerodynamic to move up. It doesn't really make sense to breathe down and let all my breath out and then try to sniff myself up into the air. And so kind of the same thing here. And as we're spreading into the legs, we're widening that space so we can expand the pelvic floor. If I'm lifting up on the pelvic floor and creating that resistance against it, if I have a tight pelvic floor, I'm creating more tension in the pelvic floor. This leaves us vulnerable to injury, but and dropping down the pelvic floor on the exhale also leads to like prolapse, incontinence, hemorrhoids, hernias. So you think about sneezing. If you sneeze or cough, if we let it, that's an exhale, right? A contraction. And so if we're dropping down as we sneeze or cough or laugh, then we're likely to pee on ourselves. Right? We're pushing down. So we want to, kind of tighten around the urethra so everything kind of stays in. The exhale, everything compresses. So this will help retrain the body. This is something you can do morning before you go to bed or before an exercise, just to remember how it feels in the body. So as we inhale, we'll spread into that pelvic floor, lengthen through the spine, spread across the chest. Exhale, lift and gather and zip up through the body. I like to move the arms with the breath. Everything moving in the same direction, so I don't have to think too much about anything. Just focus on that muscle moving outwards, spreading across the roll. And exhale, lift and zip. Think about blowing up a balloon between the hip bones. And then using the pelvic floor muscles to deflate that balloon. Move the breath in and up the body. Inhale, spreading into the base, rooting down all the way through the legs and toes into the ground. Exhale, lift and gather. Inhale, widen, release. Exhale, create that structure, that A-frame of the body. Inhale, open. And exhale, zip up. Inhale, open. Exhale, softly lift. And then one knee at a time, move the body a little side to side. And come standing. So it's a great exercise too. It's really basic, but it helps us, get back into what does it feel like. So I know when I was trying to reverse the breath, I would catch myself and I'd be like, oh no, I'm backwards breathing. And I was like, oh, what's it supposed to feel like? Because my body's so used to doing it the opposite way, it was hard to kind of get that going. And so it'd be like standing at the grocery store, and I was like, okay, then I thought of goddess squat. And I was like, all right, instead of doing it wide out and exaggerated like this, I can just bend my knees, think I'm going down, spreading the legs, exhale, lift and gather, right? So I can then reset it, and then, okay, that's what it feels like, I can practice it again, right? It takes time. And so we just want to be compassionate with ourselves, because it's a chance to practice that, right? And a snake doesn't just drop its skin, it's all raw underneath. It just slowly, gradual change. We want life to be that kind of easy transition. It's nice to not have that contrast of and then everything's ripped away, right? So it's slow, easy, take your time, go easy on yourself. But yeah, it's gonna open up so many cool things for you. So let's come down. So a good one to practice it with is cat-cow. I like to do cat-cow on the floor, especially for those who are new. Like I said, I'm used to teaching people who aren't very familiar with yoga. And if we are tight in the pelvic floor and tight around the sacrum, using the weight of the body is nice because we can kind of massage. So we're going to do pelvic tilts, which are pretty much just cat-cow on the back. So as I inhale, I'm going to arch my back as if I were doing cow. Right, lengthen through the belly, blowing up that balloon in the hips, spreading through the pelvic floor. And as I exhale, I lift and gather, just tilting the tailbone up towards the ceiling, curling into that cat. But don't let the tailbone, or you can lift the tailbone off the floor, but don't push into like a bridge or anything. Let the legs relax. We're just kind of wagging the tail. Inhale, filling up through the body. The back arches off the floor. As we exhale, tailbone curls in, back laminates down. Inhale, sequentially peeling off of the floor. Exhale, create that nice wave, that wag of the tail in slow motion. Inhaling the cow, arching the back, spreading through the shoulders, relax the neck and the jaw. Exhale, tailbone comes up towards the ceiling. Inhale, release and spread through the pelvic floor, widening the palm of the pelvic floor. Exhale, lift and gather, zipping up through the spine. And if you like, you can play with moving it into bridge. So as we inhale, the back would arch. Fill up down through the hips, then exhale, lift and gather, then just push into the feet. Create that support in the back as we zip up through the spine, through the belly. Inhale, slowly lower down, unravel the spine, unrolling the hips forward as you breathe in. Exhale, tailbone starts to curl in, hips lift up, zip up through the spine, or through the belly. Inhale, chest, mid-back, low back, tailbone. Kind of like rolling up a tube of toothpaste on the exhale. Squeezing all the toothpaste out, inhale. It's also kind of like those party favors that are kind of rolled up, little noisemakers. Imagining the breath move down the central channel of the body, inflating all the way down to the pelvic floor. Maybe even past the pelvic floor, into the ethers, down the legs. Exhale as we gather. On your next inhale, come down, and we'll remain on the floor here, and just do a few soft pelvic tilts. Not as exaggerated. Really soft and subtle, just feeling the motion, maybe the pulse of the pelvic floor. Softening, lengthening the belly. Exhale, knitting the ribs in. Windshield wiper the knees side to side. And we'll take it into a hands and knees cat-cow and see if it feels a little different for you, a little more familiar.
When you're exhaling, are you walking or moving?
You're lifting and engaging that pelvic floor, so creating a Kegel, or how you would stop, urinating.
Sure, but then are you locking the bandha?
When we're doing like an exaggerated one, right? So I'm not gonna walk around totally, really exaggerating my breath. But when I'm exercising, I do want to get the most, efficiency out of that pump. If I'm doing the work, I might as well be cleansing whatever I'm moving out, right? And so it's a good question. So yeah, it is kind of when I'm doing that, then it is kind of like a slight like and let go, right? And also with the Jaladhara Bandha, I'm kind of engaging all the bandhas on the inhale, I'm engaging these two. On the exhale, I'm more engaging that one, right? And this one a bit just to move the air out, but that's more, navel center, just the navel center back. So as I inhale, I'm kind of engaging Jaladhara Bandha to create that Ujjayi breath, right? So what I kind of think of at Uddiyana Bandha is kind of like creating Ujjayi breath in the ribs, right? I'm doing Ujjayi in my core, right? So just that slight constriction so that I can regulate the breath a little better. So when we're mouth breathers, that's a large intake valve. So when we start breathing through the nose, the esophagus, so we can, regulate the breath a little better. When we can learn Ujjayi breath, that slight constriction, we can regulate the breath even more. So that's the same idea. We want to be able to do that with our diaphragm and our pelvic floor, right? Have that control over all of our bandhas, because they are where the portals where things move back and forth and control how the pace of that and the pressure and how we fully cleanse. I have a video where I go over breath capacity and show the difference of how much breath we get in with belly breath versus pelvic floor breathing, but then also the difference between how much we get into belly breath and then I exhaust it with pelvic floor engagement, the Muladhara Bandha on the exhale, just to show how much breath I got from the intake. But then I compare it to the traditional breath of inhaling and then exhaling, dropping the pelvic floor and not moving all of the breath out, right? And it shows you how much breath we leave in the body, and then that decreases our next inhale, right? So then we just have this reservoir of stale air kind of sitting, in the body, which, creates tension and creates lifts. So let's move into a couple of cat-cows on our hands and knees. Kind of feeling it, soften the shoulders, and let the elbows bend slightly. You tap the feet out on the floor, maybe wag the tail. One thing I like to think of to help keep my pelvic floor soft and bring my attention to that is imagining if I had a tail. I like a big fluffy cat tail, but you can do whatever you like. It's just kind of softly swaying, right? Just energetically moving, extending from the tailbone, rebounding up the spine, and softly flowing. So we can inhale, arching the back, spreading through that pelvic floor, feeling that length in the belly as we open that Muladhara Bandha. Exhale, lift and engage, curling into this cat pose. We can feel how the movement of the breath really helps us in our exercises. Once we can automate the breath, we're not longer having to manually
adjust, it's so much, things become so much easier. You'll see your practice advance so quickly. Not that that's the goal, but it's nice to have that ease. Inhaling, spreading through that balloon between the hip bones, between the sit bones. Exhale, lift and gather. This is when you get a little bit more free form. So if we're not used to this function, it may be a little bit hard to tap into. Something I find nice to feeling these to engage is crunches as well. So we'll come back onto the back. And this is kind of like the cat-cows on the back again, but now we're gonna use both parts of the body, the top and the bottom. We're not just wagging the tail here. So we're gonna inhale into our cow pose, exhale, crunch, right? Creating that C curve. Inhale, release the pelvic floor. So see if you can let your movements just be initiated by the pelvic floor. You don't have to come up that high, but inhale, letting it relax. Exhale, engaging, creating that structure. Inhale, release. Exhale, lift together. Bring everything to center. It's going to take a while to form that relationship, that intimacy with our pelvic floor. If it's tight, you do self massage when it comes to pelvic floor. It's kind of hard to do yourself. You can get something called a pelvic wand or Thera wand. When I did pelvic floor training, I went home to do a manual assessment, and it felt like my pelvic floor felt like bone. It felt petrified was a perfect word. So it was traumatized, and it was just kind of stuck to the bone. And once I started working with that area, it's amazing the release I got through the chest. All of that tension gets referred up to the more mobile areas of our body, and the shoulders and the neck. And so being able to release that just really freed everything up. Alright. So we're going to come up to seated. We're going to do a couple more, just feeling into this. Do some simple forward folds. Bring your feet out in front of you. We'll start by placing the hands on the legs, like mine above the knees. And close your eyes. And again, connecting the base of the spine, the sacrum, the top of the spine, the shoulders and neck. Let that tailbone point down into the earth. Relaxing between the sit bones. And let the breath be like a seed that sprouts in the ground, begins to rise up through the base of the body, rising up through the pelvic floor. Breath rising through the trunk of the body, branching out through the shoulders, the lungs, head, ears. Exhale, closing down for winter. Gathering the nutrients of the earth as you lift up towards the belly button and the ribs. Inhale, let the breath move in through the base of the body, rising up through the chest, spreading through the shoulders. Widen the base of the body. You're going to inhale to take in a deeper breath. Exhale, lift and gather. Dispersing the breath through the body into the cells. Inhale, opening through the base, receiving the breath. It grows up through the body, branching through the arms, shoulder blades, back of the neck. Exhale, lift and gather. And so now we're going to kind of think of that party favor again, kind of inflating on the inhale, or those kind of dancing windsock men, right? They inflate on the inhale, then exhale, just lift and gather, and let that movement just let your body kind of fold forward. You don't have to go all the way down.
we're just using that tension of the breath through the tone of the belly to erect the body. Then exhale, let it surrender. So breathing down, expanding through the pelvic floor, letting that initiate the breath. Exhaling down as we move the pelvic floor down and create that vacuum space for the diaphragm to lengthen down. Give space for the lungs to expand. Relax the toes, relax the back of the knees. Just feeling that tension through the pelvic floor as the breath moves in, inflates the body upward. Lift and gather, move the breath out, let the body fold. And we can widen the legs a bit, not to the full extension, just so we can kind of notice the different sides. This kind of helps to stretch the pelvic floor. Actually, we do a little bit of massage on the sits bones, and we'll wiggle the toes side to side. You hear some grinding with the muscles there. Let the body be heavy. You can place your hands on the floor and kind of move yourself side to side. So same idea here. Inhale, inflating up through the body. Exhale, fold one way. Inhale, inflating up. Exhale, lift and gather as you fold. Inhale, expanding through the pelvic floor, taking the breath in. Exhale, let the body move softly with the breath. Inhaling up. Exhale, other side. So when it comes to breath, we're not really forcing the breath in through our nostrils. We always have pressure, air pressure going on around us. And all we're really doing on an inhale is relaxing our muscles to allow the breath to move in. On the exhale, we're compressing and ushering it back out. And so we can breathe, not pulling it in through our nose and the top of the body, but just by widening the pelvic floor, extending it downward, making that vacuum space for the diaphragm to move and inflate the lungs. And welcome the breath in, and exhale, lift and gather, move it out. Inhale, create that corridor for it to move down. And it takes time to adjust. You might find yourself getting frustrated. I find it similar to learning to drive a standard car, if you've ever tried that. Tried to teach anybody, there's that threshold of impatience and frustration that we all go through. And I know in my first week of learning this, I couldn't really feel my pelvic floor move much. When I go home and try to do it myself, I get so frustrated. It took a couple weeks and I could feel things moving and it made more sense. And doing the massage is helpful. I do have a video. It gives you more information on the wand and stuff like that. Y'all have any questions so far? Is anybody kind of getting the feeling of it, or are you finding yourself facing some blocks? I'd love to hear what y'all are dealing with. Yeah.
So I have a trouble like core bending, but like my exhale, I got skyrocket up. Is that because I'm really tight?
Show me what you mean.
So I can only like bend this forward naturally,
Okay.
and now I can stretch like or really try, but I can't like just like.
It could be a lot to do with tension in the sacrum, right? And that which is connected to the pelvic floor. Because the pelvic floor is the base of our body, it's connected to our legs and everything that comes out from here. And so when it's tight, it's kind of pulling everything in. So it creates tightness here in the hips and the lower back. We don't have a lot of mobility there because it's, as I see people get, especially males getting older, they're kind of like their butt gets sucked up into their body. You just kind of see it. And so then working with them in the and their buttocks start to relax and flare out. It's interesting. So that can definitely cause some restriction in our movement when we're trying to fold forward and we have that tightness in our hinge, right? So when you're folding forward, are you lifting up on your pelvic floor? You're still having, so lifting up on the pelvic floor, zipping up through the body, moving the organs in and back is the ideal. You can bend your legs, which might make it easier to feel. So we don't need to go very far just to feel into the pelvic floor. The point of this exercise here is just to feel the movement of it with the breath, right? So the inhale is going to come up and exhale, I just move this much.
Should you feel like, if it's, when it feels like it's working, do you feel like a trickle, like in that area? That's what I feel like.
It could be that kind of thing. It has this kind of undulation, right? This kind of sequential. And so that when we start to awaken nerves in kind of dormant areas, you may feel tickling sensation, it may feel irritating, it may feel funny, pleasurable even. So these things start to wake up and they're getting oxygen again. It's kind of like removing a scab, like, oh, the air is really cold, right? It was like, oh, what's this? It's kind of waking up. So this kind of stuff will definitely start to happen. And this is our nerves reconnecting, so it's all kind of closed up. It's hard for that connection and communication to happen until you find that starts to open. But that's very typical, especially for men having that tightness here. Y'all's tailbones are a little bit differently situated at right horses, and for women, our hips are a little more stable, childbearing and menstruation. We have to really learn how to stabilize our hips, but guys are just kind of so set, it's just easy for them to get on and they're like cantering and galloping. It takes me years to learn how to do that, So yeah, it's a little bit different. Yeah, you're welcome. And one thing teaching men, I often say, breathe into your balls as you inhale. As you exhale, lift your balls. Use the muscles. If I told you lift your balls, use those muscles. Inhale, drop them. And for women, I'd say, imagine the vulva as a flower. There's the soft petals of the flower opening as you inhale. As you exhale, closing those petals softly, right? Inhaling, open. Exhale, close. Yeah. So you may notice, in class, when the teacher starts to say, breathe into the belly, you can breathe into the lowest part of the belly, right around the pubis bone, right? And breathing and filling that up. That works too. A couple more exercises. I'm going to show you the balloon thing. That's really interesting. I'm going to show you the balloon thing, and then we'll do the exercises. That's something to think about. And we'll get a visual because I use the balloon visual on this too. All right. So I'm going to do belly breath. I'm going to do a chest breath first. Breathing through the mouth. And I'm going to get a lot of air in this one because my lungs are expanding. I'm just not using the base of my body, which, we don't want that to be stagnant and stale in life. So don't breathe like this, but I'll show you what. This is why, as babies, when we don't have that function, we can rely on that. We rely on our parents for our nervous system regulation, so we don't have to worry about that either. But as we become adults, we need to learn how to figure that out, right? And typically, most of us, our parents didn't know, so we never learned. So be easy on yourself. And they didn't know either. We're all just one organism growing, advancing, evolving together. So just honor them for playing the role they did in the lineage of getting you to where you are in the branches, and be glad you didn't have to do that work. Stick to your own. All right, and now I'm going to do belly breath. I'm going to do a belly breath, and I'm going to engage Muladhara Bandha on the exhale so we can see how much breath gets into the body. Oops. Okay. Belly breath. And this will be in pelvic floor breath. here you can see already the difference of how much breath we can get in the body between pelvic floor breathing and belly breathing. But now I'm going to do belly breathing, and I'm going to lift up on the inhale and drop on the exhale like it's typically cued in class, in A class, not my class. So, belly breath. All right, so I'm just doing belly to spine compression to move the air out. If I can get it. So here's my belly breath. So here's the difference, right? There's a big difference. So we have two reservoirs to take advantage of, and if you sing or do any kind of vocal stuff like that, speaking, projecting your voice, you really want that extra kind of subtle lever, fine tuning to really, help us and have that extra support. And here between the different belly breaths, whether when I'm not engaging the pelvic floor on my exhale, I'm leaving this much air in my body, right? And I'm decreasing my inhale by however much of that, right? To where now I'm interested. Okay. I'll play with that at home, but now I'm like, what if I just take my next lower my next inhale? But anyway, okay. So let's do a couple more exercises. One more, and then chill. I'm just gonna show you this one really quick because I find it fun. Everybody feels things differently. Everybody's bodies differently. We have our tension in different areas, but so this one we're on hands and knees. I'm gonna think about that balloon between the hips again and letting the breath initiate my movement again. I'm not trying to move my leg very high. I don't really even care where it goes. I don't even have to take my foot off the floor. But I wanna bring my attention just into that pelvic floor. So as I inhale, blowing up that balloon, and as that balloon blows up, just let the leg rise on that expansion. And exhale, I think about it like closing a garage door, using that palm of the pelvic floor, retracting the fingers and pulling in. Inhale, just letting it lift up on that breath. Exhale down. Again, it doesn't have to move very far. If I'm going to start to engage too much, then I might start to tighten and contract in my pelvic floor, and I don't want to do that. And the spine here is neutral. Moving the cat cow. Just tapping into that subtle connection, sensitivity of the muscle, regaining awareness. Let me switch to the other side just a few times here. Inhaling, blowing up that balloon, sipping down through the belly. Exhale, lift, gather, zip up to the front of the belly, out of the chest. Inhale, widen between the shoulders, widen between the hips. Exhale down. Inhale, spreading the palm of the pelvic floor, opening that window. Exhale, closing down. And when you're ready, just maybe wagging the tail side to side. Relax the shoulders and the elbows. Let the head hang down. Shake the head, yes and no. And we'll come down onto our mats. We're gonna do a cat stretch, and actually, yes, we are gonna do a cat stretch. Let's first do this. So take this bolster. Push your feet on the ground, bend the knees. Again, a nice thing to massaging the pelvic floor is just where it's connected. So the sits bones, all this area in the glutes, all these larger muscles, we can release tension there so we can let go of that pull on those connection points. And maybe going in circles, move one knee to the side of the hip joint there is nice. We're going to take our bolster, let's roll down onto the back, place the bolster on the shins. Just rock the knees side to side, let the legs relax. I'm not using any tension in the muscles of the legs or the pelvis, just using the arms to guide the legs side to side. You can inhale, let the knees rock forward. Exhale, pull them back in. Exhale in, inhale as they go forward, blowing up that pelvic floor. Exhale, belly to spine, create that space for them to fall back. When it comes to sighs and sounds, great for ushering tension out of the body, helping those vibrations move out. Using the pelvic floor to guide the sound out is really helpful. And I'll let the bolster move around the ankles or the tops of the feet. Just kind of wiggle side to side with the knees. Move side to side. Bring your knees towards the wall in front of you. Move the legs side to side. Then bring the knees back into the chest. We're going to roll over towards the right. You can place the bolster along the hip and the thigh. Just bring some weight. Maybe balance it on the thigh and the calf. And stretching the arms out side to side. We're going to do some cat-cows here. So inhale, let the tailbone move back. Lengthen through the belly, fill up through the chest, widen through the arms. Exhale, tailbone curls in. And wagging the tail here in this twist really helps open the lower back. I hear some pops, grittiness. Inhale, filling up the entire length of the spine. Exhale, cleansing the body of breath. Inhale, tracing the breath into the lungs from the base of the body. Exhale, clear it out. And relaxing the cat-cow, just let your body surrender into the floor, into the stretch. Then look over the opposite shoulder. And spreading across the chest as you inhale, softening into the floor on your exhale. Maybe even noticing the movement of the pelvic floor, whether it's right or wrong, just noticing the muscle, noticing the belly. When you're ready, roll back remove the prop, roll and onto the back, knees towards the chest. Rock your hips side to side a moment and then over to the left. Place the bolster on the hip, on the thigh, calf. Stretching the arms out to the sides. I like looking up to the ceiling as I do my cat-cows. Inhaling, tailbone tilts back towards the back hand. Spread through the shoulders, exhale, lift, zip up through the belly, creating that cat pose. Inhale, fanning out through the base, through the chest. Exhale, gathering, integrating, delivering. Inhale, expand, tail reaches down and back. Exhale, forward and up. A couple more times on your own, then let your body relax into the pose. Turn your head towards the back arm. Breathe down the length of the spine. Exhale, surrender. And breathe up the length of the spine. Exhale, go deeper. Inhale with the light of the breath, move from the tip of And let your legs extend along the floor. Reach the arms above the head. Full body stretch here. Breathe down the length of the spine. Exhale, surrender to the earth. Just take a moment to breathe into the floor. Your upper back, ribs open, merge into the ground. Your lungs implant into the earth like a root vegetable. Extend. Fill up with life, light. Root and expand. The base of the body spreading into the foundation of the earth. Connect with the subtle pulses and vibrations of life within the earth. Root systems, insects, water systems. Feel the breath flowing through your arteries, through your energetic channels. Let these lines move beyond the periphery of the body into the atmosphere, lighting up the earth beneath you. Few breaths releasing on the exhale, inhaling through the nose, sighing it out. Maybe a horse's breath. Let's do 2 more of your choice. Inhale. Last one. Bringing awareness to the edges of your body. You're feeling the light hit your skin. The breath enter. Beginning to deepen your inhale, lengthening your exhale. Breathe into the fingers and toes and wiggle. Roll the eyes around behind the lids, the tongue in the mouth. You rock the head side to side, awakening the spine. Bend the knees, place the feet on the ground. Move the hips side to side, leaving the knees. Settle over into the right or left side. Push yourself up into a seat as you're ready. Seal our class by taking a breath together. Bring your hands to your heart if you like, or place them on the chest. Take the breath of light into the body. Exhale together. Thank you for taking the time to connect your body and the breath. Release tension from the body. Every time we release tension from our body, we're releasing tension from the entire world, making it a lighter and brighter space. Namaste. Thank you all for coming. If you have any questions or comments, I'm here. I have cards if you'd like. Yeah, I do a lot more stuff like starting to create sound with it and working into the subtle energies. I didn't get a chance to get to the bowls. I'm not sure if this is going to be a weekly class. I think it could kind of turn into something. I think that might be helpful because I think when I was learning, it would have been nice to have maybe a class to kind of go to every week to be like, instead of trying to figure it out on my own and do the grocery store bins, but those are helpful. But definitely like a workshop once in a while if it's not a weekly class. What else was I saying? Oh, I teach sound baths here on Tuesdays. I'm also going to be subbing a lot of Thursdays this month and Sunday.
I always want to walk up, pelvic walk at the top of the inhale rather than do the exhale.
Yeah, and that's totally normal because that's the development pattern. When we start in our chest, we don't use that at all. When we do the belly, it just naturally pulls the pelvic floor up because when we take in breath, we're not breathing. There's no air in the belly. We're just displacing mass, right? So it's either muscle or organs or whatever, fluids. So we're just moving everything forward. So instead of the organs moving down into the pelvic floor, they're just going into the belly. So, and because we're moving all of that forward, it lifts up on the belly because it needs that stretch, that lag, that slack too.
I never thought about it, but the deep breath actually is doing something that's opening up.
Yeah, I see the difference in my chest is able to move because if I inhale and I'm through my belly, right, it kind of tapers. And I'm like, why am I such a shoulder shrug? So I'm still working. I learned about it in 2019. I'm still correcting stuff because I practiced for 8 years with my belly breath and stuff. When we're reinforcing it that way, we're kind of exacerbating issues a lot quicker if we practice a lot, right?
I like when you teach this because I've always questioned like the inhale, the exhale, inhale.
Yeah.
In yoga, like, no, it seems like it should be the opposite.
It's helpful for, it's a transitionary breath. And when I learned belly breathing, I was having panic attacks in high school and I had a counselor teaching me belly breath. So it's so helpful because I was hyperventilating, so I was getting very shallow breaths only into my chest. So it helped me, learn how to relax my body, get that parasympathetic system starting to stimulate it so I could relax. So, it's not a throwaway thing, but it's a transitionary or a temporary thing.
Cool. I'm glad I could make it.
You're so welcome. What's that?
I said I'm glad I could make it. I'm reading your Instagram post.
Oh, yay. Oh, good. Oh, awesome. Yeah.
When we met that flow, I was like, oh, you can check it out.
Yeah, I'm